Yo, what's going on, homies? Today I wanted to show you how I went about getting this Sleep Token inspired drum mix using the Get Good Drums One Kit Wonder Brutal Drum Pack. Alright, first let me show you what it sounds like. All right, so the first thing that I think that we should go over is the drum velocities. I think that's super important when it comes to the drum mix. So my kicks, I'm roughly around 100 to about 80. And so that's where my kicks are, roughly, you can see. My snares range from 100 and they go down to about 33. That's for like the ghost notes. They go up to like 40 on some of the ghost notes here. And so that's super important. My pedal hats are around 54. My left crash is at 93, and then my right crash is at about 90. My crash hit looks like it's at about 100, and my far left is at about 93. I think these are super important. I think a lot of the times we go really hard to get that punch and stuff, but with these drums, man, you don't have to do that. It's already there for you, right around the 100 mark, you know? And so that's something to keep in mind as well. All right, the next thing to mention, I have my drums multi-routed. If you don't know how to do that, on my YouTube channel, I actually have how to route Get Good Drums. All right, first thing that I'm going to go through is my drum bus. The first thing that I have going is the NLS bus. I like this because this adds sort of like a console saturation sort of thing. You can see I have the drive up. The next thing that I have is a little bit of an EQ here. You can see there's not much going on. It's just trying to tame that snare. And so I'll show you what that sounds like. I feel like this helps it sit into the mix a little bit better. All right, the next thing that I have is parallel particles. I've been using this plugin a lot on my drum bus. And you can see here's my settings here. So let me show you what it sounds like off and on. So it's fairly subtle. However, I feel like it tightens the drum mix up a little bit, you know? All right, the last thing that I have that I just recently got was BG drums, the JST BG drums. I have it on the tight setting. You could see where my compression is, about 31, full drum mix, and I left the output the same. I'll show you what that sounds like off and on. So same sort of deal. I feel like it tightens the drums up and it just kind of levels out the drums a little bit more. It does bring the volume up a little bit, but I'm not too worried about that. I like what it's doing to make the drums sound a lot more even. All right, for the kick channel, I actually started it off with R bass. This is something I've been experimenting with my bass and with my toms and just various things to see if I can get some good low ends. So it's very low in the mix, but you could see my frequency is at about 36 and my intensity is -20. Again, it's very low and I'm just trying to get a little bit of that sub low to kind of match the Sleep Token type sound. The next thing that I have down the line is EQ. Now it looks pretty tame for the most part. Now I am at -30 dB in terms of my monitoring or my analyzing. And so you could see if I go to 12 at the default, it's a little bit more, it's not too much. But here is my moves here. Looks like I got a dip at about 7.2K, a dip at 3K, a dip at about 930, pretty big dip at 194, about 200 roughly. And then I bumped it again, more of those sub lows. So you can hear I'm just trying to darken it up. I heard a lot of transient in the mix, in the context of the mix, which is how I usually mix anyways. And so these are the moves that I made to try and get that down a little bit, and again, to just blend it into the mix a little bit better. Up next, we have JST Transify. I just got this plugin and I really love it just because you have your bass, your low mid, your mid, and your treble. I like this bunch because you can mess with the attack, the sustain, and the cutoff. But you can see the only real big moves that I made was my mids. I brought down the attack, my treble. Again, this is to try and fit it into the mix a little bit better and not have that initial kick transient poke out too much. I brought it down a tiny bit, you could see on the low mid. You can also see here that I brought down the sustain of the low, just so it doesn't sub out as much. Again, just trying to get it into the mix, right? This is snare. For the snare, the first thing in my chain is the Pro Q3, and here is my moves here. Cool thing about the One Kit Wonder is it's basically processed. However, there is still some back-end work that needs to be done to get it to fit into the mix that you're trying to achieve, and that's why I'm making these moves here. And again, I am A/Bing with a sleep token mix to see where their snare is sitting, the frequencies of their snare, and so that's how I got these moves here. So it looks like I'm dipping at about 4, maybe 5K, and I am boosting 200. That is the snare sweet spot. So you can hear it just brings up the body a little bit more. Next thing on my chain is Smooth Operator from the guys over at Baby Audio. And this is awesome. It is kind of like a transient shaper. It also helps with like the resonance and stuff like that. And you can see that what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to tame that really pingy sound and almost the knock from the snare. I'm trying to bring that down a little bit, and you can see here from this. And so let me show you what that sounds like off and on. So when you're cutting like this is what it's going to try and tame. And then when you are boosting like this is going to leave this portion alone. And I love this little solo button because you can just hover over it and hear what it is that you're trying to affect or not affect, right? This is adding a little bit of volume, but I'm not too worried about it. And so this is Smooth Operator. Love this plugin. All right, next thing on the chain is JST Transify. And so you could see I brought a little bit down on the treble and the sustain down a little bit. See, I have the attack down again to try and, we're trying to tuck everything into that mix, right? So nothing is just getting too crazy before it hits our master bus and all that, right? So you can see the mids brought the attack down, a little bit of sustain. On the low mid, you could see I have -20 on the attack, nothing on the sustain. I do have a cutoff, but this isn't doing anything, you know? Let me show you what that sounds like. So you can hear again, it really gets rid of that super, I don't know, it's like a, I don't even know how to describe it, but there's just this really loud sound that I want to bring down. And so that's my goal. Next thing on the chain is Saturn II. I have it on the warm tube bass setting, but you can see I did a little bit of adjusting here on my settings. These are all on warm tube, but you can see I have some EQ changes here and my drive settings are here. Didn't really do anything on this one. Did a little bit of stuff here. And then, you know, keep in mind the drive setting, and then just brought the drive up, didn't really mess with this. And so let's show you what that sounds like. So this one's kind of drastic, and I did the tweaking in context, so that's why hearing it by itself sounds a little weird. However, I look at mixing drums as like you're stacking transients, and so you want to find the transients that you like the most or you want to hear the most, and then try to bring down the ones that are affecting the actual transients that you liked, you know? And so this is my way of doing that. All right, for my tom mix, you can see I have nothing. I really think that the toms sound great on their own, and I'm getting some nice tom sounds from the room and the overheads, and so I just feel like these sounded good on their own. Is there something that you're struggling with, or something that you just need help on, maybe a mix that you want me to hear? Well, now you can schedule one-on-one time with me. Check out the link in the description and let's hang out. Okay, so the overheads are going to sound pretty wild on their own. But again, just what I was talking about earlier, I hear the cymbals in other channels, right? And so I'm trying to alleviate the harsh sounds. I did a lot of A/B listening with a Sleep Token mix and then my mix to try to just get it as close as I can. So the first thing on my overheads is GST Transify. You can see I brought down the sustain a little bit. I was trying to get the same sort of cymbal sustain on the Sleep Token mix. And so this is kind of just me experimenting to see if I can get away with using this to do that. It's super subtle. All right, so the next thing that I have is Smooth Operator. Looks like I'm using the Tame Those Hats preset, so we can see what that sounds like. Again, just I'm hearing these things in context, and I'm moving these things in context of the whole mix. Next thing, we have a little bit of EQ going with the Pro Q3. I have a dip at about 500, and I have a dip at about 5K. Next thing, we have the good old faithful Get Good Drums Smash and Grab on the overhead settings. I have it on the smash setting, and it looks like I only turned up the threshold and the saturation. I have it on tape saturation, and so I just brought this up. You can see my gain reduction here. So I feel like it just brings up overall excitement of everything, but it brings that snare, it tucks it in, right? That's what I love about this. This is so good at doing that, especially adding saturation. So the saturation on Get Good Drum Smash and Grab is so good, man. All right, so this is what I like to call my cymbal trick inside of the Pro MB. I like doing this, and you can see my settings here. I have a really slow release, fast attack. And what it's doing is just juggling the cymbals so they don't get too crazy and they don't jump out in the mix, you know? Again, we're trying to keep things pretty level, you know, in metal, everything's pretty level. So this is my way of trying to do that with the cymbals. Last but not least, we have Soothe 2 in the Cymbals Smooth preset, which is a Nolly preset. And you can see I did a little bit of adjusting on my own. I like to fine tune this. I'll adjust it here and there. It really depends on the context of the mix, right? Again, I will play the whole song, everything unsoloed, and I will mess with this depth setting here. So this is what the delta sounds like. Delta is what it's processing or removing or adjusting. And this is what it sounds like off and on. Love Soothe, love Soothe. It's easy to overdo, which I've done in the past, and I still do sometimes, and so I have to like catch myself. But Soothe 2 is great. All right, up next we have the Rooms. So a lot of experimentation with the drums on this one. All right, so the first thing is JST Transify. And the only thing that I'm messing with is the sustain of the bass. I want to try to keep it tight as much as I can. I like having low end in my rooms and in my overheads. I don't mind it at all. I actually got that idea from Dan Braunstein. I really love his mixes, and so I don't mind a lot of low end in my rooms. And so I just wanted to try to see if I can tighten it up. That's why I did this little move here. This might just be a placebo for me, but it made me feel better, so that's why it's on there. Next thing is a Pro Q3. You could see that I did a lot of notching to try and get these crazy frequencies out of the way, and I'll show you what those are. Let me show you what it sounds like off and on first. So with this one, I just realized that I was in the 30 dB analyzer, and so I may have went too far on these. However, in the context, it's not too crazy. And so, maybe I'll adjust them a little bit more, but I'll show you what these frequencies are. And then I did a little bit of dipping in 7K, 14K, and 500. This is mainly trying to blend the cymbals in. All this stuff that I try to do is to try and just blend those cymbals in. Again, I may have went too far with these, but I could always adjust them. So this is another sort of cymbal tamer using the Pro MB, but it looks like I did a little bit more on the 1.7K. You can see it's not doing a ton. I think it was just poking out a little bit too much, and so I just brought this in to try and tame that. Next thing is the Kramer Pi from Waves. Now, I've seen George Lever use this, and so that's why I wanted to try to use this to see if I can get closer. Again, trying to get that sleep token sound, right? And so I wanted to use similar things to what he's used, right? Kind of a drastic one on this one. You can really hear it. I can hear it like in the mids a little bit. Next thing is Smooth Operator. You can see this was done in context of the mix, so that's why it looks so drastic. I'll show you what it's doing. The thing that I feel like I did with this, the reason why I used this was to tame the knock of the snare again, I think this is another one that I may have went too far on, but again, in the context, I don't really tell. I like the way it sounds, and so these things sound so weird by themselves, but in the context, it sounds good, to me anyways. Okay, so the last thing is the UAD LA2A. It's definitely adding that LA2A excitement too, which is probably why I liked that as well. And so that's on there. This next Pro Q is nothing. I was probably going to try and affect something else, but I didn't do anything on this Pro Q3. Next up is the Dirty Room. Now this sounds so cool by itself. I just wanted to shape it a little bit more to fit in the mix. All right, so the first thing that I have is a Pro Q3. It looks like I did some reduction here, about 2K, 1.9, and then this one at about 500. And then I have another Pro Q3. Not sure why I did this, but it's here. Looks like I did some dynamic EQ here, probably to tame the snare knock, and then some other frequencies here that I wanted to tame. And so I'll turn these off and on so you can hear. The next thing is the sidechain, and so I'm just sidechaining this to my kick. I want the isolated kick to have more room, and so I kind of got this out of the way because, as you heard in that dirty room, there's a little bit of some content in there. And so I wanted my actual kick to get a little bit more attention. And so that's why I have this. Again, we're stacking frequencies, and so I wanted the frequency from my actual kick to get that, and so that's why I did that. All right, and last but not least, my parallel compression bus, which is basically something that comes with One Kit Wonder by default. And if you don't know how to multi-route that, inside of Contact, you will need to hit this little eye here. Make sure that your output is set to something where you don't have anything on. Mine is on output 13, and so now this is actually on, this is output 13. This is my parallel. All right, first thing on my chain is a Pro Q3. So this, again, you can just see that I'm trying to reduce some of these frequencies here. Next thing we have is Transify. Exactly kind of what you see is what you get, you know, a little bit less attack in the mids, a little bit less sustain in the mids. Same with the treble, just sustain it looks like. And then in the low mids, a little bit less attack. My cutoff, this is default, I believe, so I didn't touch these. But you can see that only these three are on. Next thing that I have is Flatline. I'm actually using it in the clipper setting because, again, I want to tame that snare. I like the way it sounds, but I just don't want to really hit my compressor. I feel like doing that as well gives you a little bit more of that room sound, and so I'm okay with it. Next thing is Decapitator. Here's my settings here. Low drive. I think this is almost the default. The only thing that I did was I made the tone darker and I brought the high cut down, and it's on the A setting. This is literally almost default. Very drastic difference. However, like I said, I'm trying to blend things in the mix. Last thing I have is the Pro C, and it's just doing some sidechain compression. Basically, for those of you who don't know, sidechain compression, basically you can have it trigger to bring the volume down when that certain thing hits. Like for example, I have kick and snare going, so whenever the kick hits, it's going to bring the volume down just a little bit to give room for that kick to speak. Same thing with the snare, you know? So let me show you what those are. It gives us that nice pumping sound, but it also, again, it gets out of the way so the kick can shine. Here's my snare sidechain. This one might be a little too drastic. However, I don't want the transient as much. I really want the sound, like the room sound that you were getting from this parallel channel. So that's why I did this. I probably turned it down, but again, in the context, I have to do it in the context. And now that I hear it by default, maybe I should, I don't know. I'll check it out, you know. All right, homies, there it is. I hope that you learned some stuff. I know that I've learned a ton. I also learned that I need a little bit more time with this kit to figure out its quirks, but man, this kit sounds so good. And I think that this is probably the closest kit that I have to getting that sleep token sound. Make sure that you like and subscribe. Check out the Discord. We have some cool stuff there. I also have a Patreon with some cool treats in there as well. But yeah, dudes, appreciate you guys again. Have a good one. See ya.